Overcoming mental fears after motorcycle incidents, accidents. Take 3. Motorcycle accidents. There's always a fear, a cascade of fear that follows an accident, a close call, something that you consider significant, not that others might call significant. But if you call it a significant accident or incident or close call, there was probably some mental aspect that happened to you. That's what I'm talking about today. These mental fears start to develop or come from accidents, whether it be dropping the motorcycle in your driveway or getting hit by a car. I'm not just going to talk about the fears that come from it, but rather tools, guides for you so you can overcome it, so you can grow through it. So we've all seen it before. Motorcycle, good deal, got some nice mods to it, brand new, 600 miles on it, some scratches on the left or the right side. Truth is, somebody bought that, they went down, whether they dropped in their driveway or got hit by a car on the road, whatever, something happened, scared them out of their mind, and now they don't want to ride the bike. The less of that we have in the motorcycle community, the better off we are, because motorcycle riders make better car drivers. You want to fight about it? Put it in the comments. I got so derailed right there. Okay, coming back. So what mental fears am I talking about? Well, I'll give you a story. I was riding in Kentucky this spring, actually, and I was all alone. I was going down a hill. It's a pretty steep hill, and it curves to the left at the bottom, and then in that curve and around it, the road was all wet because this huge rock wall like shades all the road, and it had rained the night prior. Well, I totally freaked out going down this hill, and I just ran off in the ditch, which was also a rock wall on one side, and I face planted. That's where this little scar came from. Face planted into my windscreen of the bike. It was a bloody mess. I was out of sorts for a few minutes. And from that stemmed fears. I also had a friend, he cleaned his motorcycle, took it for a spin around the block, went out to a main road right around the corner from his house, and just let her eat. And guess what? Somebody ran a stop sign, hit him. He ended up in the hospital. And when he was telling me about it, he said, man, I couldn't get on a bike without shaking. I was so just shaken up altogether from that. The fears that I'm talking about in my story, particularly I identified as the downhill, the turn, and the wet situation. All of those things together created a lot of fear in me. The accident really helped drive it home. And after that accident, I noticed that I had a fear for turning on a hill with wet conditions, especially the wet conditions. And so what I'm going to talk to you about is how to overcome that and what I've done to overcome it. So the first thing you got to do is say, I've got a problem, right? I've got some fear. I notice it every time I'm turning in the rain. Or anytime the road's a little bit wet somewhere, I kind of freak out. I know where it came from, so now I backtrack. What in that situation created that, and how did that fear happen? How did that start to glue together in my mind? I recognized that I was on a downhill, on a turn, with a sharp turn at the bottom of the downhill, and wetness. So the big fear was really the water. I can handle the hill, I can handle the curves, but the water combined with a downhill and a curve, that was where my fear was. But I also recognized, in evaluating all of that, my mental aspect. And you see, earlier that day, I had a bunch of coffee and I couldn't find a place to eat lunch, so I didn't have food. So my mind, as soon as those situations kind of came together, instead of thinking through it, my mind was so hyper stimulated that I shut down. My brain actually just turned off and said, nope, I'm done. Let's go to sleep right here. Horrible. So first you need to identify the fear, just as I've done. Then you need to identify what created that fear, what caused it. Now you know where your issue lies. Now you can find some corrective action. Now you can look for information. Now you can practice a new skill. All of those things to help correct it. So things that you can do are take a class, find a professional to guide you so you don't have to guess. You don't have to worry about any of that. So that's always an option. Another really good option is to talk to other riders. See what they've done to improve that situation. See what they've done to overcome those challenges in their riding. And just try to learn from other riders through talking to them about it. Another thing you can do is look up, if you can easily identify your fear and the situation that you're in, you can find videos, because YouTube, where you're at, is loaded with informational videos and how-tos of different things. You can find write-ups on it all over the internet. So you can find information, use that to teach yourself and take corrective action.
Hey, God was like, hey, you want a challenge? You want to get better at riding? Do it in the rain.
And something else I love to talk about is starting to pay closer attention to the mental and physical aspect of the riding. And in my case, it's a perfect example of the mental aspect, or the physical, really, because I had a stimulant. I was intaking something physical that changed my body mentally. They tie so closely together and are far too often overlooked. And so this is a time to also pay attention to those things. A common bad situation where you'll find this is a group ride that stopped for lunch. Everybody overate large meals, and then something happened over the next hour or two, an accident, an incident, somebody went down, somebody got hurt. Because our mental acuity drops as our stomachs start to digest all that food that we just stuffed ourselves with. So, a little note for you, it's better to eat smaller meals when you're out riding. That one's free. Next one's going to cost you $5 though, okay? You're going to have to buy me a cup of coffee. Okay, so now you've found some skills to practice. Now you've figured out where you need to apply them. And what you should do is take those new skills, take those new practices, go out and put yourself in the real world and practice those new skills or those new practices, those new things, implement them. For instance, maybe you had a really close call. You almost got hit when you were getting over. So your new skill that you found is like you weren't checking enough on the other lanes around you before getting over. So your new skill might be check the mirror, check peripherals, check deep peripherals over here, check the mirror, check deep peripherals over here, right? So you just focus on building that mental skill, that mental habit of doing that, so that next time you're getting over, you know to check very thoroughly so you don't have a close call with a car. So get out there, apply these new skills, these new habits, and get them worked into your mind. Get them worked into your riding habits. Now that you've got this new skill developed, you've been practicing, and it's come into your mind, into your habits, now you go out and you ride, you put yourself in those situations that made you feel uncomfortable before, and apply the new skill. And you do it over and over and over again until it becomes comfortable again, until you have washed the fear away and it won't be there anymore. Now go. Now, going back to my story, my case, what I had to do was first say, okay, I've got to limit my caffeine intake. If I don't have food to go with it, just don't do it, or at least limit it. Be mindful of that. Okay, Roger, check. What else I had to do was practice the skills necessary to handle a wet downhill corner. And I did in my riding. I started doing things like playing with my brakes more, intentionally looking far through a corner. And I encountered a really tough situation. I was with one other guy, and it was pouring rain. We had to turn around on some dirt roads, and there was a nice downhill, hard-packed clay. It was super slick, and guess what was at the bottom of it? A nice sharp left. And it's raining. And I went down that hill, applying all the skills that I had been working on, been developing within myself. I wasn't overstimulated, and I made it down to the bottom of the hill phenomenally. I impressed myself. It was great. And that's how I knew I had overcome it finally. Now, there was probably 6 months in between there. I didn't intentionally put myself in the rain on a downhill mudslide, but that's where I ended up. And I knew I had overcome the fear because the fear never took hold. It never took the reins. I never shut down. I made it through it confidently, right? So that's the whole thing. Now, my friend, going back to his story, he got on a bike and was just riddled with fear, riddled with discomfort. And him, much like myself, have a very strong, we must overcome this kind of attitude, which is great. I hope you adopt that as well. So what he did, as soon as he got out of the hospital, as soon as he was able to ride a motorcycle, hopped on one and just went for a cruise. He said he rode for hours until he finally shook the feeling and got over it, until he knew that he had overcome that, because he didn't want it to block him. He didn't want it to control him and actually put him at a higher risk for an accident later on. Riding is very mental and physical. There's a lot of mental and physical application going on riding a motorcycle. And if your brain and your body are not working together, or not working well, or not developed enough, it can really put you at a risk. And if you're riding around with fear in the back of your mind, don't let it take the wheel. Get ahead of it, figure it out, and overcome it. You can. I believe in you. I'm serious. Take care of your body, take care of your mind, because they're both going to heavily affect your riding performance. Thanks for watching, guys. Live free, ride hard, and I'll see y'all on the next one.